vlogging. It's Friday the 13th of April. It's spooky. Although I feel like I am the wrong length for this microphone. I feel like Friday the 13th isn't a spooky time anymore. I don't know. Hold on. So the vlog, camera tweak. Well, it sort of became a snowballing situation. I was going to try to do like f8 depth of field, but I screwed up the math, so I'm doing like, okay, so the theory was like usually TV shows and movies are not super shallow, like 1.8 or 1.4 depth of field, because it's really hard to maintain focus, especially if there's multiple people in the frame. So I was like, well, I figured they usually use something like f8 or f16, so I'll do that. Except I did it off of a full frame equivalent, so I'm f4 on the lens, which is an f8 full frame equivalent, so I feel like that's like a 5.6 on a cinema camera. Anyway, because I did that, I had to use a manual lens that was fast enough to do it, but then I couldn't get I was gonna put it in shutter priority mode and I couldn't get the exposure compensation to work, so I ended up using a bunch of ND filters, and so I ended up having to open my ND filter pack and put on some filters. So that's the whole thing. So my issue has been, I also put stuff in the background to prove that it's a pretty deep depth of field. So this is f4 on a Micro Four Thirds camera. So this is f8 on a full frame camera. That's the amount of background blur. You can pretty easily see the lamp behind me. My problem though is when I've been doing these, the image has been too bright and I've had to darken it, which I think is fine because it's a mirrorless camera and you want to sort of usually expose to the right digitally so that you get all the highlights and you don't have to worry about information in the shadows. But they've been way too bright, so I tried to actually properly expose it this time and I sucked. For whatever reason, the camera outsmarted me today. So yeah, I locked an aperture, I put on neutral density, which I never do, and I think I'm probably still too bright, but I can't tell. So incompetence is what that was. Let's see here. Did I write this week? Yes. I have a month left of my grad program, so I pretty much have all my scripts due, of which I have 3 left that I need to turn in. One's going into workshop this week, so I just did a pass on that real quick and putting it into the workshop. And then I have another half hour that I've been trying to work on, and I'm gonna make sure I finish it this weekend. So I've been rewriting that, and it's been going slowly, but I think I finally picking up speed. So the only other thing I have to rewrite after this in order to graduate is my feature, which is a nightmare, but just because features take forever, they're long, and I'm in half-hour mode. Did I read this week? Only for class, which was a feature, I forget. I've been reading a lot of half-hour stuff and even hour-long stuff. It's a relatively quick read, especially half-hour stuff. And then you read a feature and it's so much more, like many times more time to read it. I forget that it's frustrating just because it takes a long time. Like I usually find features to be much more story satisfying than other formats because it is a contained story usually. But man, getting through a feature is just frustrating just because I'm in half-hour mode. This is awkward. It's because I can't lean back because I have the mic. I screwed up. Let me see if I can fix this so my back doesn't fall asleep. I mean, I guess that works. Did I watch stuff? Yes, I watched a ton of stand-up because I keep thinking that maybe I can do stand-up again, but I shouldn't. I I watched an interview with Anthony Jeselnik. I really like Anthony Jeselnik, and he was talking about how he did the stand-ups he really likes, who he really sort of is inspired by, are joke-driven writers, which I agree with. I really like that format. Like my favorite stand-up writer is Mitch Hedberg, rest in peace, and he was literally set up punchline, set up, like he was all jokes. So in my sort of like casual research this week, I would put like Anthony Jeselnik in that list. Maybe George Carlin, I don't know. But I also realized Mitch Hedberg, of course, and then Bo Burnham. I always forget that Bo Burnham is very sort of language driven. He does everything. It's also like a stage show because he does music and dancing and gags and stuff, but a lot of it is set up punchline in a very classic comedy way, and I for whatever reason I like that a lot. I think it's because you can track where the jokes are, whereas when you tell a story in stand-up, it's hard to track where the jokes are until you actually put it up, and then you can hear the feedback, and then you start building out the jokes. So I like the idea of set up punchline stand-up writing. It's neither here nor there. I saw A Quiet Place. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely go see it. It's real scary. I saw it on a Tuesday night, and I was the last seat in the theater. So it's doing well. It's doing good for them. Good for the Krasinski family. I keep watching Barry, which is on HBO, which Bill Hader, I quite like it. Silicon Valley, same thing. I think this last episode of Silicon Valley, where they bring back the refrigerators, best episode of the season so far. I would put it in like the top 4 episodes all time. Like, it was a great episode, especially because the Jared character is so weird, and every little thing he says is so hilarious, even though usually it's throwaway jokes. It's super great. I've been going through Zach Son Is Gonna Be Famous, because again, I somehow have a boner for Bo Burnham again. It really is a show for somebody who likes television, it's in the same way Community many times was a show about a show, but a lot of times was a show about just pop culture in general and sort of the understanding of stuff. Zach Stone is very narrowly a show about a show, and it's really, it's great. It's too bad it only got that one season, because it's well done. I'm also realizing now, because I can't see the lens, I can only see the filter, that it's real spooky because I can see my lips moving. Oof. Because I have a ND filter on the front. I also watched clips from the Mark Zuckerberg congressional hearing, and it's weird because it hadn't occurred to me, but I mean, if I'm talking out of school, I'm talking out of school, but it seems to be that he was sort of like a pop culture figure because Facebook exists, in the same way sort of Tom from MySpace was, until the Social Network movie came out, and then he became like a larger than life sort of like Steve Jobs-esque character. But what's weird is it's hard for me to mentally separate the Jesse Eisenberg character from the actual Mark Zuckerberg, which is to say the Jesse Eisenberg character was sort of just like a weird dick, but the Mark Zuckerberg character is even a little bit more nuanced. I'm not saying Jesse Eisenberg did a bad job, but I'm saying like Mark Zuckerberg is such a weird, antisocial sort of character, and the way he gestures and the way he speaks is so like, I don't consider myself even on the spectrum of what is normal behavior, especially in how my face works, but this guy is so far gone compared to me. It's like it gives me confidence, because he is just, it's a disaster. It's insane. I don't understand how these senators are even entertaining the idea of talking to this guy, because I don't think the right information is going back and forth. I think they're saying stuff to Mark Zuckerberg and he understands it because he's brilliant, but whatever he does is so distracting by everything about him that if there was a chance of information getting back to the senators, I think it's muddled in how he delivers it. It's super weird. I don't feel bad about making fun of Mark Zuckerberg because he is by definition an opportunity to punch up. Like I'm not punching down by making fun of Mark Zuckerberg ever. He could be in jail and I'd be like, well, now it's a Martha Stewart situation. Yeah, so I watched a bunch of the Mark Zuckerberg hearing, and I was afraid to watch more because I was afraid to sort of adopt those facial cues and stuff and become even weirder than I already am. Writing tip. Again, this was a lesson I recognized in workshop recently, and it's this idea that you bring in a script and you're expecting sort of a really light polish, like people are only going to have like joke notes or adjustments in dialogue or little tiny stuff, when really just by definition of your script not being there yet, you end up getting all these notes about fundamentally changing aspects of it, like structure notes or storyline notes, like big notes. But because you were like mentally set up to only hear polished notes, you're really resistant to these big, broad, like changing a character's motivation type notes. It's this idea that in my experience, you're always better served if you end up realizing or being shown that you need to drastically rewrite an aspect of your script. Even though your brain's like, that's so much work, I don't want to do that, you should go ahead and do that because it's going to make it better. And if you polish something that's inherently flawed, it's going to remain inherently flawed. It's just going to be really polished. And those scripts exist everywhere. If you know how to write, if you're a decent writer, you can polish something into a really good situation, but you still need that initial sort of properly worked out, properly workshopped idea, and then polish it. Otherwise, it's just an empty vessel. So, yeah. And I'm totally guilty of this too. It's what I'm embroiled in with my half-hour show that I'm rewriting right now. Is I thought I was ready for a polish, and the episode is now 2 11-minute episodes. Like I had to throw out more than half of my show and condense it into like an 11-minute cartoon, and then I need to add a whole nother 11-minute cartoon. Like it's that level of fundamental thing. But I realize that it's more satisfying. Like I feel better about the project now that it's actually taking a form that feels right. So, and then we did the box office, and I suck. I can't get a read on Tyler Perry. So I said Quiet Place got it right, Ready Player One got it right, Blockers got it right, and then I said Acrimony, which is the Tyler Perry movie, and I was wrong because Black Panther beat it. So my 4 and 5 are switched again. So I got 2 wrong because Acrimony lost to Black Panther. So I cannot get a read on the box office for whatever reason. This week I think it's really easy because the only real big movie coming out this week is Rampage with The Rock. And so that's going to be number 1. Number 2 is going to be A Quiet Place, which you got to go see. Truth or Dare is also coming out. I believe that's Blumhouse. A horror movie. So it'll probably do pretty okay. Ready Player One, and then Blockers, number 5. And Rampage. I'm going to force myself to go see Rampage, but Rampage is one of those movies that as soon as I heard that they were making a movie about it, I got super excited because I loved playing Rampage. I think that's a super great idea, and the sort of the nature of the world of Rampage is so tongue-in-cheek that there's really a lot of opportunity there to tell a great story. However, the version that got made that is in theaters right now is a disaster movie with The Rock as the star, which I understand. If The Rock signs on to something, he's going to be the star of the movie, not the giant ape. but that's a different movie. That's, you know, it's like the same way Mario Brothers in 1989 or whatever, they basically just took the name and what the Mario Brothers look like and got rid of everything else, and it was a completely different, like, universe. So hating on Rampage. I'm gonna go see it though, so at least I will have been part of the industrial complex that made it. But just so one of the things I want to do on the other side of May after I graduate is I'm gonna just start putting out there, just because who the hell cares, treatments of like Rampage, for instance. Clearly this is not the Rampage that I wanted, and they're never going to make another one, especially in the way that I would ever want, for all the reasons. But I think I'm going to go ahead and write a treatment for what the Rampage that I would want. I'm going to write that and just put it out into the world, just to say, here's what I think Rampage should have been. So basically fan fiction. I'm basically going to be doing treatment version of fan fiction. I'm going to do it for a bunch too. I have an idea for Dragon Ball Z, which is another property that will probably never exist in live action in America again because of how badly it went the first time. Just that kind of thing. Like, great ideas that just sucked. So, yeah, good job. See you next week, Friday the 13th. Spooky.